All right, and Flash Friday starts right now. That is our brand spanking new bumper roll-in music. We got rid of the long, like, Ron Bodette Microsoft Flow videos and stuff. I'm Doug Splinter. Todd Kidda is not here.
I'm Michelle Gilbert,
All right, so
in place of Todd.
yes, and Michelle, what do you do for?
I'm a Teams technical specialist in the North Central region.
Right, and one of the community leads for the M365 user group in the Twin Cities, which had an amazing 297 attendees
Yeah.
admin workshop yesterday.
It was awesome.
It was fun. So
turnout.
they filled up the facility, all sorts of amazing content yesterday. So check that out. Also, SharePoint Saturday in the Twin Cities was the week before.
Mhm.
So lots of amazing content from that. So all
Yeah.
sorts of great stuff going on in the world. So we're going to talk, we got some stuff today. We're not covering much Power Apps. Well, kind of one Power Apps thing, not much
Yeah.
Flow.
Right.
Kind of a significant Power Apps thing. There was some content released around Teams and Power Apps we're going to talk through. We're going to hit the some EMS / management type announcements that were there. And then we're going to dive in and have a dialogue between Michelle and myself on Project Cortex. Right?
Sounds great.
And so we said, we did the Post Ignite show and people said you were short on specifics. I'm like, did you see how many news announcements there were? We're going to have to peel some of these back. So
Yeah,
today
we are talking about 30 minutes.
yeah, and the previous year we did the
Sorry.
Super Show and people said we wished you did that again. Okay, so next year we'll do that again or whatever. But this is episode 117 of Office Flash Friday, so clearly we are going nowhere. And what we want to do is break these down. First, this is kind of in case you missed it, because I thought it was a pretty significant one, is that that Microsoft Configuration Endpoint, or Microsoft Endpoint Manager, which is the new coalesced SCCM
Right.
and Intune and
together.
yep, that together,
Combo
better
package.
together. And of course, if you didn't see that, there was an announcement on top of that. And let's cut to full screen on the content if we could. That the announcement was around your entitlement to Intune based on SCCM entitlements. So you should go check all that stuff out. But really cool was the breakdown of how enrollment happens. And there's a spectrum of management around BYO, corporate-owned devices, and everything else, and basically placing the user in control of their enrollment experience. And so how you do enrollment targeting, how you do the Apple push notification service stuff, it's really slick. And so they break down how you do all the targeting of stuff, how segmentation of the apps works, what consideration of the enrollment is, how you can do restriction, what the postures are. It's a really good overview, and you can cut back of exactly what's going on. So I highly recommend you read through this and absorb the new iOS 13.1, I think it's 13.1, component on top of that. At this point, the forking of the iPad OS won't impact this initiative at all. Down the road, as they take it, they now have 3 major operating systems that are going to have to be under consideration: iOS for phones,
Right.
the iPad OS, and OS X.
Correct.
Right, and so we have, like Defender Advanced, not Windows Defender, Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection has a Windows component and a Mac OS X component for doing, heuristic defense on top of the endpoint. So I like this. I like I like where we're going with the alignment. I like the privacy integration with Apple's privacy policy, which is, I think, pretty strong. I
like the remote actions, the retire, delete, remote lock, and sync.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's good stuff there. And I think it represents Apple continuing to mature in their ability to do enterprise management. If you go to that EMS core blog, the EMS, just trim off that URL about privacy gets a boost, there's another interview between one of the Android, the Intune team that manages Android Enterprise, and some of the Google people who support that stuff and the partnership around enterprise management. So, because we manage a lot of stuff, and let's be honest, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's extremely high of people who use Office 365 in large enterprise. So our data is there, and everyone wants to control their business data. So therefore, this alliance between us and the makers of operating systems, no matter if they're competitive devices or complementary, because Office runs anywhere. Speaking of Office runs anywhere, one other little bonus thing from Ignite, maybe people didn't catch. I don't even know if I put the link on it for yours.
Okay.
So this is like a surprise topic. Did you see the announcement about the consolidated Office application?
Yes, I did.
So this is kind of interesting because it gets rid of the clutter of icons. I don't know about you guys, but I have a grouping. I have a little folder, which mobile operating systems, I've been critical of them for a while. Most of them remind me of Windows for Workgroups 3.1 because they have folders and they've got icons and
That's funny
folders.
because I have folders, and inside of my folder, I have my Word, my Excel, my PowerPoint.
That's right.
I have all these little apps.
This is what we used to have in Windows for Workgroups, right? It's Windows for Workgroups in your hand.
Yeah.
And the app's all open full screen and task switching, which kind of reminds me of the old WordPerfect shell where you could, now I know I'm completely aging myself, but if anyone is out there, used the WordPerfect 5.1 versions, but the WordPerfect shell, and had to do EMM 386 management and the rest of the stuff, like this, mobile operating systems are kind of like that. I mean, the UI is richer, the graphics engines are better, but it's the same stuff. You're basically doing memory management. You don't have, disk you can swap to maintain
Right.
state, which is why multiple applications don't run. Which is why when you crash, if you will, between Office applications, that's not as great of a user experience. So this combines Office into an app.
Right.
The Office app.
One app for all.
One deployment, one update, and then the integration.
One control administratively.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little less curate, little less apps to push.
And probably a little bit smaller, right?
As an aggregate, it is, because the common
on
code
your-
libraries
right.
are all, so in bandwidth constrained,
Right.
these are all important.
Yeah.
So I think this announcement's actually a little bigger than,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's nice. I just have to push this one application, but there's a lot more to it. And they put like the cool AI stuff into the, from the individual ones that do it. So I do think it'll also make things more discoverable.
Yep.
Right.
Well, and what are all the apps in it? Because I didn't dig too deep in, but I'm pretty sure it's probably your Office Pro Plus. So
It's Word, Excel, PowerPoint.
Okay.
That is in there at the moment. On top of it, and so yeah, there they are, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. I would imagine.
Do you think there'd be more? Do you think there'd be?
I don't know. I mean, OneNote
Yeah.
itself has a very interesting, rich canvas for note taking and inking and penning, and so I think that one might remain. In Outlook, at this point, it's going to remain separate.
Sure.
Just because of the containment. But you have email, you have document creation, you have note taking. What's the future of Whiteboard as that goes? I don't know. Be interesting.
Yeah.
Right? Here's the good news. This does simplify it. Makes it easier for security policy, alignment, containment, data labeling, cross data sharing between data labels. Think about the potential for DLP on top of this.
Right.
All sorts of goodness.
Yep.
All right. So I like that.
Great surprise topic.
Yeah. Well, segued from the whole, hey, now you have an easy way to get enrolled, and you have a simpler application period to go ahead and put in. Next up was the tasks announcement.
Yes.
So I have to give complete shout out to Corey Buzzle, who's been saying that he thought tasks was going to be this next big thing. We did a bunch of initiatives around. He's like, you can just see the landscape building up on top of it. And so they did release, and you've cut full screen to this for a minute. They did release the ability for us to do, to have the tasks over here on the left-hand side as a primary pinned service on top of it. Now, again, so what do you got right now? You got activity, chat, Teams, calendar, tasks, calls, if you have voice enabled on top of it, files, which are across it,
Right.
and then Yammer Communities is coming, was an announcement as well.
Correct.
So this really becomes this sort of portal for your to-do, your calendar, your meetings, your chats, your team, and providing the context and collaboration around it. So I thought it was pretty cool. And obviously it syncs the tasks sync with both to-do and
Outlook.
and Planner.
Oh, and Planner.
Yeah, and therefore the flagged
Right.
items, which come in from Outlook.
Right.
And you do get that task over in Outlook, but these two right here are really slick. So I am a huge fan of this one. You can cut back,
Yeah.
simply because, and I don't know if I don't know how often you get to watch, because we talk a lot.
Yeah.
So it's like, and we both work here, so it's a little different. But like we've been really tracking the announcements from the to-do team as a kind of almost a primary workload for a while. Because I'm like, this is really significant, because task management and getting things done has been a challenge for a long time. And so think about Power Automate with flows and UI automations, their ability to generate these things and then manage them.
Put them all in one location,
put 'em
maybe
all
a SharePoint list. And then I think of like just how, maybe you tend to learn only one and you stay in that, so then you don't even use these others, which is also something, that can disable you from all the cool new technologies like to do.
Yes. And you called it out, Outlook tasks, right?
Right.
Now, the Microsoft Launcher, the native to-do tasks, if you like the to-do application on top of it. The Cortana stuff.
Yep.
Which is interesting. I have been experimenting with the Alexa Cortana
Yeah, I have as well.
integration.
Yep.
So I'm just kind of seeing where we go with intelligent agents and crosstalk between them. Because I have access to the Alexa Auto. So it'd be cool if you're driving to be able to,
So do I.
right?
I've been testing that.
Yeah, it's kind of fun, isn't it?
It is pretty nice.
So, and we
I
never
asked
talked
her-
about that
I
either.
know, not at all. And that's why I asked her to read my email.
Oh.
Because I instead of sifting through, and of course now I'm at Microsoft, really isn't a lot of email, which is a really nice change for me.
Well, that might be role-based because manager, sorry. Yes.
Okay, so not yet.
So not
Uh,
yet. Yeah.
But
Be
having it
careful,
read is.
be careful what you ask
Okay.
for, right? So it turns out as you get signed up for more be careful of your distribution list.
That's
Be
exactly
careful
it.
what you ask for, right?
Make your Outlook rules work for you.
It is like, yeah, I'm not that. I'm a filer. Are you a filer? Do you have folders?
Not, I just started,
Yeah.
a few months ago, so I haven't
Mm. But
created them
natively,
yet,
are
but
you a person who makes folders for
I
things?
used to, yeah.
Yeah, well then you probably will. I'm not. I just leave it all in a giant pile and I search,
Okay.
which is going to be really relevant to our Cortex discussion around,
Right.
around searching and how good people are at taxonomy and management. Okay, well let's keep rolling across the board. So check it out.
But look forward, coming up later in 2020.
Yeah, early. They said
ability-
early 2020,
Early,
didn't
yeah.
they?
So I think that might be Q1, but so when you add comments in PowerPoint, Word, Excel, if you get @mention, now that also will be added into your task.
That's crazy. I mean, like tasks is becoming a real service across the fabric.
Right.
And again, you can integrate with the API. So if you have some ERP system or like a construction system that has to-dos around from an engineering task list, or say, for example, as a development team.
Well,
Just saying.
and I'd also like to see, I know people who live in OneNote and OneNote tasks. I wouldn't mind if those tasks, since they're already integrated into Outlook, or you can, have that also roll over into the main tasks area.
Yep. Now, because we didn't have a chance to talk about this, I just want to pull it up on screen. I'm not going to dive into it. But there was a Teams phones roll up from the announcement from it. So what happened with Poly and Crestron and Yealink and audio codes, all that stuff. There was a post from Duncan Barnes on that. So if you're a voice-centric person, go check that one out.
Yep.
And Richard Branson was talking about those, who leads the Minnesota Teams Skype link, the old MinSlug, now Teams voice user group. He was talking about that yesterday at the event as well. So lots of content out there around the voice workloads if you want to get to. However, for me, the big announcement of the week was this one, that we released a Teams and Power Apps white paper talking about how you integrate and publish Power Apps as first-party tools discoverable tools within Teams. So let's pull up. This is always an exciting exercise to look at a white paper together. But let's cut full screen on this for a brief moment because I think it's worth.
It's pretty small.
Yeah, it's not. Look at the topics coming on top of it. Hey, it says here's typical use scenario, the type of applications that they have, how to create apps for Microsoft Teams, how to add Canvas and model-driven apps and portals. So it gives specific guidance on top of that, how to administer the apps, how to put them in, like the way you can approve different team applications and the rest of the stuff. So it's pretty good.
This is huge.
Yeah.
I think I haven't seen something that has a one place that you can learn how to manage, integrate, administrate, all in one location.
So it says, hey, what's out of scope? Okay, we're not talking about Power BI and Power Automate, so we're not going to UI flows. It's just Power Apps, right? So it's not the entire Power Platform, which does have integration options to Team. This white paper is really about Power Apps. It does not explain how to build Power Apps. It assumes you have built one and you'd like to do integration into Teams on top of it. It's not an ISV integration scenario. So if you're making industrial solution, non-citizen or corporate development tools, this is not for you. Now, it doesn't mean you couldn't go have a commercial app provided to you that you load into your environment, then it would apply. So some ISVs are building canned Power Apps that you import and then link into data sources. Those are different, because those are your apps. So essentially, those would be covered underneath this. Full deployment and management of D365, third-party solutions to integrate to PA, or development of other types. Okay, so you can cut back. So if you're building a bot, this white paper is not for you.
Right. True.
But what it does cover is the 90th percentile scenario where you're like, I'm going to have citizen developers, and I want their apps to show up and be integrated into Microsoft Teams.
Yep.
It's great.
Yep.
If you have not, as a tangential to it, as this starts to get out there, if you have not looked at the COE content around the Power Platform with the dashboards and the governance control framework.
Oh yeah, the development kit, toolkit.
Yep. Which lets you use the Power Platform to govern
your usage.
Yep.
Your analytics.
It's a little bit meta, but Power Platform governs Power Platform, right? So I mean, you kind of, it's got all these dashboards and tools and everything.
You unravel it, you actually see all the flows that are happening.
So I had an interesting one hit me yesterday. So I'm building a solution internal for our marketing teams from the MTC, that story thing. And we published that work at the SharePoint Saturday around how to have a Power App. And I showed it before, and it's now out on GitHub. And we'll put the link in the show notes on how to take a Power App and it programmatically generates a SharePoint news page. One of the things I was doing was sending out an announcement, and I was frustrated because I don't know if you look, there's a little double arrow next to the email action now where you can drop it out of Pro mode to Basic mode.
Okay.
When you're in Basic mode, it lets you look up from your company address book. When you go into Pro mode, then you can inject values dynamically from your flow. But it doesn't show you that.
Right.
You just have to know.
Right.
So there's a little tiny little double arrow. So if you're like, how come I can't do dynamic injection? Look for the little double arrows. They have that, right? And I was since I last generated an email action, that
Yeah.
UI had changed, which is the way
It goes.
it
That's
goes, right? But I was like, well, I wonder what the difference is between the Outlook mail and the mail notifier, right? They're just a generic mail object, because there's Outlook and then there's this generic mail. And I was comparing the two, and I did find out an interesting thing. Inside of Microsoft, the Outlook connector is an approved one, mail one is not. So I added it to my flow. I hit save, and it said, well, you can do that, but your flow is now disabled. It violates our enterprise data loss prevention policy.
Right.
Because you in this flow, you have things which are not permitted to be tweeted. So I thought, how
Right.
fascinating.
Yeah,
right?
it's in your business group.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then I went back to using the Outlook connector, and then I had to actually remove that before I could enable my flow.
Now, I wouldn't mind that if maybe I select that connector, it gets maybe added to my flow, and right there I got a pop-up that said, hey.
Yeah,
this
it
is
happened
not
at save time.
Right, I know it happens at save, but I'd like to see it before that.
I don't disagree
So I don't
with that.
build, and then go, oh.
If there's not a user voice, someone go make one.
Yeah.
Tweet Michelle and I, and we'll upload it for you on top of it. Okay. Well, so I do think this is worth a read. I think it's really good content, and I was surprised at how I don't know how to say this, how polished this is. I'm just gonna leave it like that. I was surprised. It's good.
Yeah.
It's what it needs to be, and not what it doesn't. Okay.
Good content.
All right. So now we're gonna move into our last 13 minutes, and we're gonna talk a little Project Cortex.
Good. Let's do it.
All right. So a lot of splash, because this is legitimately the first new service that we've shipped from Office 365 since Teams. And Teams is going quite well.
Right.
And you and I were talking about this. For those who've been around for a while, you've got historical SharePoint search, traditional, and then we got FAST.
Right.
Which you were pointing out.
Yes.
And the FAST was an acquisition. At first, Microsoft charged for FAST separately.
Yep.
And then it
Now
got
they
folded into
Baked
SharePoint.
it in. Yep.
And then SharePoint went into SharePoint Online.
Right.
And we released 2 versions of hybrid search, an OK one with separate, banded, and then an integrated one where the entire search index lives up inside of Office 365. Meanwhile, a lot of the search at like most Office 365 services turned into be based on Azure services. So if you want to know how they really worked, so if you broke down and you looked at all the automation script and you watched when you set up hybrid search, you would know that you were actually connecting to Azure search nodes.
Right. You wouldn't know that at all.
Right? But if you looked at the script and you were nerding out on the DNS entries and figured out, you were connecting to Azure search. So SharePoint hybrid search and SharePoint search is integrated into Azure search. And then we announced Microsoft search.
Right.
Where your corporate results show up in Bing as a search portal with the secure banded results.
Was that called Bing for Business?
It was.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's been rebranded into Microsoft Search.
Yep.
And I think is there a connection between Microsoft Search and Universal Search, the search bar that's in every Office 365
Correct.
product?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So, but you and I have been in search for a while.
Yes. Oh, yes. I've been
And
trying to craft search for customers for years.
For ourselves, for the places we work,
Yep.
as consultants. And I would love to hear from someone who thinks their search is great.
Right.
Who doesn't have a squadron of people making it great. Because if you are an organization and you're producing tons and tons of information, how good are you at governing and getting out that which is old and non-relevant?
Right.
Most people are not that good.
Sure.
So there's a lot out there. The more you get, the more you have, the more it's difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Absolutely.
The new and relevant from the old, but maybe you need to keep the old. What about new concepts that dynamically come into the enterprise? Who defines those? Who does those? So Project Cortex is, and by the way, we released Delve in the middle of that too.
Right.
Which was a graph-powered search. If you have not, you should go out and look at the Gremlin database, right? Which is a graph-powered database. You think about a graph like a GPS, gets you from here to there. There's, segments and vertices, and they have properties.
Yep. And of course, a lot of this is connected to your Active Directory using Azure Active Directory.
Yes.
So that's got to be populated really well too.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So the elements
all
of
that fabric.
the elements of the fabric of the interconnect, like look at the little spider web mesh things you see with all
Right.
the points on top of it, right? But your GPS, let's pick on one of the adaptive ones like Waze or Apple Maps or
Mhm.
Google Maps. So you put in that you want to go to a destination, and it
Mhm.
attempts to do real-time traffic and incidents.
Oh yeah,
That
my car
data,
does that, so I
Ye-
can look. Oh yeah,
yeah.
all right, up ahead, I'm gonna go around this.
but how good is that data?
Right.
The GPS is
It
only as
doesn't
good
tell
as
me. I just trust it.
you trust it. It's only as good as the data it has against which to interact.
Sure.
Now, traffic scenarios are kind of simple. Like cities and states publish that stuff. There's lots of real-time telemetry on it.
Mhm.
Sometimes mostly you can at least wait driver input for it.
Right.
If we take this into an enterprise, what are the signals of interest in the data we need to make a good GPS
Mhm.
within our enterprise to find points of interest? Delve was Microsoft's first attempt to essentially establish a knowledge graph within the domain of the Office Graph APIs, and let people have a tool in Delve
Mhm.
that would let you search and make an intelligent recommendation,
Right.
not just the one with the quickest keyword match or whatever it is. To be like, okay, this is not just like we're both technical sellers in the field,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Inside of Microsoft. So our searches and the things we're looking for are different than a software developer
Mhm.
who's actually looking for a developer interface. We might put the same term in, but our jobs and the nature of them are quite different.
Right.
Right?
But we all have people that we need to connect with,
Yes.
and documents that we're working on, and that we are working on outside of our own, but as a team.
Yes.
And I want to see that all in one location.
So there are signals of interest that we can
Right.
do, but we're really only good at finding these raw things. Project Cortex
Yeah.
makes the attempt to reason over the content, the deep nature of the content, to deconstruct it, to take a deeper analytic. Some of those features that were over in Azure Search and Cognitive Services and Lewis, our language
Mhm.
understanding and intelligence services, all these advanced AI models, and bring them in
Mhm.
to that framework and provide user experiences and embedded intelligence across the board. And so as a customer video, you can skip on the post on top of it. So the goal is to find, present, and curate knowledge.
Yep.
Like the actual knowledge of your enterprise, to give it to you in the places you use every day, and to basically also within the context of security trimming and everything else.
Mhm.
And so I'll give you an example of one thing. So let's say you were storing a whole bunch of purchase orders on top of it. And let's go over to full screen on content for a little bit here. So you can see it intelligently went through and found, here is the places where interesting, like metadata oriented information was in. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that in and apply it as metadata to that particular
Right.
asset. So it's automatically recognizing this, and then
So so I feel like this is, all the years I've spent in SharePoint to say, okay, I need a column for this and a column for this, and
yeah,
really put together the metadata. Now it sounds as if Project Cortex is able to take a look at that
yeah,
sheet, right, that document, that PDF, and go, I think I recognize what that metadata is,
yes,
and I'm going to put this in a list for you, and
Yep.
you can tell me if I'm right.
yeah. Now if you cut back, so we've had some of this kind of stuff for a while inside over in Azure, where you could load it in and do paper scanning of things and
Mhm.
apply intelligent metadata extraction, but it wasn't really dynamically integrated. If you just toss a bunch of this into a file share or somewhere else,
Mhm.
like you got a file share full of these things that
Right.
get spat out by some sort of process, like you'd have to go set up a separate scope, separate Azure Search Index, do a project, have a separate UI to search and discover that.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, I've helped teach Azure classes in the classroom down the road. We do just that. We have a whole bunch of documents, you load it in, you put it into service, you educate the model, and out it comes. But that's platform as a service developer. This is SaaS,
Right.
which means you just get it.
It just happens.
Now that means you get less control over it than you would if you were over on the developer side.
Mhm.
So everything comes straight
Right,
up,
absolutely. Right.
right?
I think we need to talk about, there's always 3 types, right?
Yeah.
Mind the gap,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, there's a GUI, an API, and a power something,
That's
right?
right.
And this is definitely us bringing it over into the raw GUI and
Into the
enabling
GUI.
it for the user just dynamically and intelligently.
Right.
All right, so first thing, you can take unstructured content like this and
Mhm.
turn it into more than just I OCR'd it and I'm
Mhm.
searching the words, because all that does is increase the word index relevancy if you don't have intelligence
Right.
wrapped around it,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So that's one of those things that Cortex includes as a core concept on top of it. And then again, it comes up the idea of topics,
Mhm.
and then knowledge entities, and then it puts in this knowledge
Knowledge
network. So it looks for acronyms and all the rest of the stuff, and it says, and here's the interesting one, that the metadata that's applied to content, either by or by experts, so either by humans or by automated intelligence, an important thing, because people can contribute. It's
Right.
not just the AI.
Correct.
You are still important to this model, right? Is by an updated managed metadata service. That one got by me. Did it get by you too?
It brushed by me.
It brushed.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're a SharePoint person, oh my goodness.
that's your term store.
right.
That is your term store.
That's fascinating. Now, and what are we gonna be able to do with and how that's gonna go on? But it says allows you to define common terms in a taxonomy, including synonyms and
Yeah.
multilingual support. And I hadn't quite absorbed the MMS side of it, which is why I did not want to talk specifically about Cortex and go, ooh, shiny, because I'm like,
Mhm.
how is this thing built? The answer is it's built using these Azure AI services that we've had for a while, that developers have been wildly successful with building their own solutions. We've now brought those over.
Right.
They've matured enough, first party into O365, and we're weaving them into the constructs that you already know, like MMS.
And I think we can interact with it. Like, so take for instance that purchase order. It looks at the page, it identifies what it thinks is the metadata. I'd assume then adding it to the term store.
Yeah.
I go into the term store and then I can manipulate according to what I think.
That's right. You can add
Yeah.
synonyms to it. You can, we could do summative operations. We could do,
This is
it's going to be really
pretty
interesting,
awesome. Yeah.
right? And I just, like the MMS thing, I was like, wow. And how's that going to be managed?
Yeah.
Like, I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
And if you had a very large corpus, terabytes and terabytes of data, like, what's that like?
Yeah.
And I know some of my customers are immediately going to hit it. So,
Well, and I think about, okay, so uploading maybe a document to a document library in SharePoint, and then Project Cortex takes over, reads the document, adds the columns automatically, which would be pretty cool based on the metadata that it found. But you can manipulate that back in the term store and say, this guy doesn't really fit, but all the columns are already created. So now you can do some really mass, like manipulation or grouping or views based on that document that it just read.
So now that metadata, its weighting, its relevancy, the context of the document, the human people are all part of that knowledge graph. You can start to see where it's going to get pretty good
Right.
at saying which things are relevant to you.
Yep.
All right, so a couple of things. Great UI, you've probably seen the demo where you hover on top of something and they're actually now building in these little knowledge resources and related topics and stuff. So you're going to see some of that content and the UI just float. So if you just happen to be in somewhere and you're like, what the heck, if it's relevant and related to knowledge, right, they're going to be, cards appear automatically when a topic is detected.
Right.
All right, so you get the topic cards on top of it, and to be able to make, and topics, they make it easier to find people who are related. So it's going to build that people network on top of it, right?
Well, and what they also said, because I watched the demo of this at Ignite, is that it'll find the first word, it'll do it at that first word. Anytime after that, it won't just corrupt your page with all these links.
Correct.
So it's just going to do it that one time, and learn about what your acronyms are in your organization.
Yep, and you get by the way, if you watch this animation, if you go check out the post when it's out there, you can see a little bit of they try to illustrate sort of the GPS, the fan of it.
Yeah.
So here's constructions, operations, reliability, which is what CORE stands for. And there's a little bit of the sort of visual map of how information connects. And so you're going to see these topic pages, the cards, the embedded. These are the UI where you're going to actually have Cortex stuff come in. These roll up into your knowledge center where you can check out your trending knowledge topics, look at the profile and the rest of the stuff, and then tune your model.
Right. But what I also understand is that it creates a SharePoint page for you.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
The topic card is
The
kind
topic
of like,
page, yep.
Yeah, it's just your shortcut to the more robust built page.
This is in regards, it feels like the automatic generation Wikipedia style.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So there is still.
Or your automatic KM builder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A richer integrated taxonomy of all these things that come together on top of it. And again, spun and orchestrated by all the traditional signal elements that you've seen from things like My Analytics and the rest of the stuff. Only now we have access to a much larger information set of taxonomy and metadata-driven context that's curatable on top of things.
Yep.
All right.
I think of like Delve. So Delve is people oriented, right? I see my profile. I see who I am in relation to people, what we may be working on. Now taking that to a different context and saying, hey, this document also has a family
Yep.
of how it's all connected. Now let's look at that type.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so these things roll into new super powered SharePoint libraries called content centers.
Yes.
Okay, so here's I guess my lesson to this. Don't let your SharePoint skills slack off. This Cortex thing is SharePoint stuff
Right.
with a whole bunch of amazing new
Right.
AI-driven services interconnected into your
Yeah.
SharePoint fabric. So do not let your information architecture, your taxonomy, and your MMS skills slide. Go take your SharePoint exam.
Right.
Go remap your MMS skills and sharpen that saw, because if you thought a game was over,
Right. It's
where
not.
it's not. The team
No.
stuff is there, but this knowledge network's going to be it. Now, I had one more area I wanted to cover. I said before, hey, Cortex can also connect to third-party repositories, so it's not just about what's in Office 365. Check out this list as we wrap up our day. Windows file shares, ServiceNow, SQL databases, intranet websites, media wikis, ADL Gen 2, Salesforce, and then third-party connectors through the Ingestion API. And we'll be adding more connectors in the coming months. Okay,
There's
so
so much to break down on this one.
this, to me, represents our ability to finally, in a singular UI, take advantage of the power of Azure Search, Microsoft Search, Azure Search indexers, and bring them into the first-party viewing within O365. Now, I have no idea what the UI behind this is going to look like, which, maybe it'll just be the knowledge cards and the pages and the cross links, or whatever. Because if you've done true enterprise search, there's like what I call, federated, where you take it out to the service, or ingested, where you bring it in.
Right.
How do you do security trimming against these things? That's all defined within the Microsoft Search connectors.
Right. So you're only going to see what you have access to.
Within the scope of that search connector.
Now I wonder if they're talking a little bit about, so when you open up Microsoft Search, you do a search on a word, and then you can search in your organization. It drops down.
Yes.
And when it drops down, it'll group files. It'll group each of the products. So you expand that, and then that becomes like a vertical, in a sense, of all the data related to that particular search. So the relevancy now, if you're adding third-party connectors,
Yep.
same thing. It's creating that knowledge card. Open it up, it expands and drops down. That's how I'm envisioning it.
Well, guess what? Your envisioning is pretty good, because if you look at like what Azure Search has for the UI elements, very similar to what you're describing, right? But anyway, so what can you start doing to get ready for Cortex right now before the service ships? Get your taxonomy house in order. Start looking at your MMS.
Yep.
Start contemplating how these sort of meta library architecture is going to be automatically generated, and how you'd want to weight that, and start looking at the Azure Search connectors, because all the erector set components are already on the board. And so you don't need to wait for Cortex to start ramping your Cortex skills.
Right. I would even start reviewing Microsoft Search, because I think that's a little unknown product that really is pretty robust and incredible.
It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about this. All right, so term store work, as you pointed out,
Yep.
like it's time to sharpen those saws again, because
Clean it up. Look
this
at your
is
term store
gonna,
again.
and this is gonna, and then, you can leave it alone, let it go, or you could tune it a little for your enterprise.
Right.
It'll work both ways. Right? If you're a serious enterprise with search people, you're gonna go in. If you're not, and you never had those people, now the AI model will do its best work on your behalf, so you won't really need to.
Right.
Like, you don't have to go in and tune all this stuff. If you don't want to do it,
Yeah,
you can
you
just
don't
activate
have to.
Cortex. No, but most of our enterprise customers are like, ooh, shiny. I want to know how it's working
Yeah.
under the covers to tune it. All right.
I just had that conversation. So if you turn on Microsoft Search, you go in there, you can actually start doing some like questions and answers, and create your own little FAQ inside of a search engine that is relevant to your organization.
It's going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
As it comes into tendencies that we can show you, we will start breaking down and go to the back end, like always.
Yep.
And you're welcome to join me for that ongoing
That would be
quest for
great.
Cortex. We can just make that the Michelle and Doug series for Office Flash Friday. So hopefully that was a good kickoff for you. Knowledge Network, new super libraries, Azure Search integration, managed metadata service, with a whole lot of embedded UI, the Azure Cognitive Services bringing in intelligent form recognition and indexing, amazing.
Right.
So I am really looking forward to this. I think if you just fire for effect and let this thing go, it's going to make a huge impact on your organization. Yep. If you did a little tuning, probably even more.
Yep.
Well, that was an almost 5 minutes overrun.
All right.
Flash Friday. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We will
missed you,
not.
Todd.
Yeah, we missed Todd, but we will not have an episode. I would say Todd will be back next week. He will not. It's Thanksgiving in the
That's
United
right.
States next week, and about 10% of my audience is not in the United States, so I apologize. We will not be here because of the U.S. holiday. We'll probably do a blog post with a couple of info links and stuff like that instead, just so if you just need some Office Splash Friday reading goodness, I have a couple of things. We'll post out a couple of the fun sessions from SharePoint Saturday and the GitHub repos, so if you want to do some cool stuff there, we'll have that. Otherwise, everyone have a great and safe holiday for the United
Yep,
States.
safe travels.
Yep, and if you have a little time to donate or volunteer, as always, we would love that. And then one small update, I did get the sticker place is sending me my little like best practices hero stickers.
Yeah.
So for those who sent me their conditional access rules, that's
All right.
it's on the way. And don't forget again to read that MFA post by Brad Anderson, where he talked fast but did not stutter. MFA is included for all Office,
For all Office.
Office 365, Azure, and D365 services. So if you did not own MFA for some strange reason, you do now. Go turn it on. That's my final holiday rant. Everyone take care.